Quote, Love, unquote, by New Amsterdam. Chapter 6. The problem isn't that Bakugou kissed him. No. The problem is that afterwards, Kirishima can't stop thinking about it. It's not the first time he's imagined kissing Bakugou Katsuki. He remembers being a teenager, laid out in bed and imagining. He'd been 15 when Yue had first come on air, the same age as Bakugou, but it hadn't been until years later when he'd been able to categorize his fascination with the actor as attraction. That was after he started to parse why he admired Crimson Chevalier so much, why he found Sun Eater's masculine voice more attractive than Teen Idol's Nejire-chan's. Being attracted to men was not something Kirishima had struggled over. It was a realization that had come upon him over time. It had taken shape and rearranged the facts of his life so they'd made more sense. His posters of Bakugou Katsuki just took on a new meaning, and Kirishima looked up at them and thought of Bakugou not just as someone to emulate, but someone he wanted to be with. But those had been faraway fantasies of a boy who would have never imagined his dreams of fame becoming a reality. He never thought he'd meet Bakugou, and so his fantasies had been safe and distant and purely hypothetical. Now, though, everything is different. Now, it's been 2 days and Kirishima is lying in bed, thinking about how deceptively soft Bakugou's lips had been, how quick the kiss had been, over entirely too soon, how the crowd had shrieked as Bakugou pulled back, how Bakugou would look down his nose at Kirishima and left, without any sort of explanation. Kirishima had stood there, stunned, until Kaminari had pulled him away. He'd woken up the next morning to his face on every celebrity gossip site, his hair a blazing fire under the harsh lights of phone camera flashes. The pictures had been proof that he hadn't just hallucinated the entire night. But it left him unsatisfied. Bakugou had kissed him in a way that played well for the cameras, visible and unmistakable for what it was. But Kirishima hadn't gotten to hold him, or look into his mouth, or bite down on those soft lips. Fuck, Kirishima says out loud, staring at his ceiling. I'm so fucked. At a baseline, Kirishima knows he's being selfish. Bakugou isn't pretending to date him because he wants to be close to Kirishima, physically. And really, Kirishima shouldn't want that either. But the acting is confusing his body, probably. Whenever he's around Bakugou, he feels the electric current running between them, and he can't help but want more. His phone is lying on the bed beside him, and he rolls over to grab it before he can think better of it. He taps out a message and hits send. Kirishima doesn't know how long he lays there, but next thing he knows, his bedroom door is slammed open. What? Bakugou! It's like he's been summoned by Kirishima's imaginings. Bakugou Katsuki, standing in his doorway, wearing that old skull t-shirt and a disdainful expression. He looks down at Kirishima with raised brows, his arms crossed over his chest. Damn, he says idly. You live like this? Kirishima glances around his room, color rising in his cheeks. It isn't so bad. A bookshelf full of CDs, a freestanding punching bag, some clothes littering the floor, everything a violent shade of red. He leaps to his feet and jumps across the room, coming to stand in front of the UA poster hanging on his wall. It isn't a poster of just Bakugou, thankfully, but he's the central figure in the image. Kirishima stands up as straight as he can, hoping to block the poster from view. What are you doing here? Bakugou scoffs. You're a piece of shit, you know that? Kirishima frowns. What? Bakugou silences him with a glare, then fishes his cell phone out from the pocket of his jeans. He unlocks the screen and reads off in a deceptively calm tone. That kiss after the concert was pretty lame. Have you ever kissed anyone before? Kirishima is sure, now, that his face is the same color as his hair. Well, he starts to explain, it was kind of just a peck. And if we're supposed to be madly in love, we should really... I'm gonna fucking kill you now, Bakugo says, in that same calm voice. It's honestly more terrifying than when he yells. How did you even know where I live? Hey! Kirishima dodges as Bakugo rushes at him, sidestepping and running to the far corner of the room. Calm down, okay? It was just a joke. Bakugo's hands are balled into fists at his sides, and he lets out a barely human growl as he charges at Kirishima again. Kirishima's not exactly sure who'd win in an all-out fight between the two of them, but he's not really interested in finding out. How'd you even get here? Kirishima says, laughing nervously. Your front door was unlocked, Bakugo hisses from between clenched teeth. But you don't have to worry about that, because I'm gonna fucking bury you after I kill you. If you kill me, you'll never get any better at kissing, Kirishima says in a rush, running round to the other side of the bed so that it's between him and Bakugo. Bakugo freezes at that, face contorting with rage and something like bewilderment. I'm not bad at kissing, you fucking idiot. The way he says it is like a child's retort. Kirishima can just imagine him saying, I'm not bad at anything. Maybe, Kirishima allows, but I bet I'm better. Are you shitting me? Bakugo seethes. You should be grateful I'd even consider kissing a shitty-haired bastard like you. Kirishima is very grateful, but Bakugo doesn't need to know that right now. Have you? He asks, instead. Have I what? Bakugo spits back. Kissed anyone, before. Bakugo throws out a hand, gesturing at the UA poster at the wall. Obviously. Kirishima can't blush any more than he is, already, but it's like he's just been called out for having a poster on his walls 3 years after a show stopped airing. He imagines, for a moment, all the kisses on UA, Uraraka and Bakugo's characters mostly, and the gradual development of their relationship through carefully orchestrated touches and measures of affection. Kirishima snorts. That doesn't count. Those were like stage kisses, for a show. For a long moment, Bakugo doesn't say anything at all. Kirishima is definitely a horrible person, but he can't help the sly smile he wears in that moment. Have you never kissed anyone off camera before? Shut the fuck up, Bakugo orders. His expression stutters, now guarded. He crosses his arms over his chest again. Like you're any better. Kirishima isn't much better, but he does have a little experience. His grin widens as he says, Actually, I am. Bakugo's jaw visibly clenches. But hey, Kirishima says, trying to sound as appeasing as possible. There's a really easy way for us to, bridge the gap. What the fuck are you talking about? Kirishima sucks in a breath and then answers quickly before he loses his nerve. We could practice? For a moment, he's sure that Bakugo is about to hit him. But then Bakugo's clenched hands loosen, and he looks at Kirishima with assessment, rather than murderous intent. Fine, he says, moving to sit at the edge of Kirishima's bed. Wait, really? Bakugo turns his head to the side to glare at Kirishima. Get the fuck over here before I change my mind. Kirishima doesn't need to be told a second time. He comes around to the other side of the bed, sitting at the opposite end from Bakugo. In his earlier daydreams, he'd imagined today going something like this, but those had been fantasies, wishful and unrealistic. Now Bakugou Katsuki is sitting on his bed and waiting for Kirishima to kiss him. Holy shit, Kirishima mutters, clenching and unclenching his hands. Are you just going to stare into space, or are you going to kiss me? Bakugo says, irritably. Kirishima clears his throat and readjusts his position, turning to face Bakugo fully. Bakugo has his lips pressed together on a firm line, glaring at Kirishima but pointedly not looking at his lips. Something inside of Kirishima softens. He leans closer to Bakugo and raises his hands, stopping just short of touching Bakugo's face. Hey, he says. Relax. Shut up, Bakugo mutters. But that's enough. When Bakugo's lips part around the words, Kirishima leans in. He rests one hand against Bakugo's shoulder and curls the other around the back of his neck. Then he pulls Bakugo closer and presses their lips together, more deliberately and with far more awareness than he'd had 2 nights ago. Bakugo doesn't react for a long moment. His lips are as soft as Kirishima remembers, but they're still against Kirishima's. Then, Bakugo reaches out and grabs Kirishima around the wrist, holding him in place. He pushes into the kiss rather than pulling back. It's Kirishima who leans away, gently detaching himself from Bakugo so that he can look him in the eye. "You can move, you know," he says. "There's a rhythm to kissing." "Shut up," Bakugo says. "I know that." "Okay," Kirishima says agreeably. "Should we try again?" They lean in at the same time. Bakugo's lips part readily against Kirishima's now, and when Kirishima gently traces Bakugo's lower lip with his tongue, he feels Bakugo shudder against him. Not to be outdone, Bakugo reaches out and grabs Kirishima's hair, loose today around his face. Kirishima licks his way into Bakugo's mouth as Bakugo pulls at his hair, and the conflicting sensations are enough to push everything else out of his mind for that moment. Something buzzes against Kirishima's thigh, jolting them both out of the kiss. Bakugo curses under his breath, grabs his phone out of his pocket and throws it to the other side of the bed. "Fuck off," he mutters at the phone, for good measure. Kirishima chuckles. He wonders if Bakugo knows how much he uses that phrase as a space filler. He can't possibly mean it every time he says it, just like he can't possibly mean it every time he threatens to kill someone. With a huff, Bakugo turns back towards him. "Stop slacking off," he says. Kirishima's smile grows crooked as he lifts his hand to press against Bakugo's cheek. "I'm pretty sure I'm gonna wake up in a second and this will have been a dream." Bakugo rolls his eyes, brushing off Kirishima's hand and pressing his lips against Kirishima's experimentally. He isn't hesitant. The pressure of his lips is firm and solid, but he moves away too quickly for Kirishima's liking. "I'm serious," Kirishima says, and then he kisses Bakugo again. He mirrors the angle Bakugo had gone for, but lets himself go off-center at the last moment, so that his kiss lands half against Bakugo's cheek. "Obviously, I'm everyone's fucking fantasy," Bakugo says, with an arrogant assurance that really shouldn't be as attractive as it is. He pushes Kirishima back, his hands a comfortable weight on his shoulders, until Kirishima falls back against the bed. Bakugo looms over him now. "You're not special that way." Kirishima blinks up at him, wondering what Bakugo means by that. Of course, there's probably thousands, millions of people who find Bakugo attractive. Best Jeanist wouldn't be selling so many pairs of jeans if that wasn't the case. But Kirishima resents the assumption that his feelings are typical. "Yeah?" Kirishima says, reaching for Bakugo and pulling him down so they can kiss again. "Does everyone get to do this, too?" Bakugo acquiesces to the kisses, pressing forward on his own and mirroring Kirishima's techniques. Even amidst their conversation, they're getting better at this. Their lips fit together naturally, with fewer awkward clashes of teeth. Bakugo huffs and bites down on Kirishima's lower lip. "Wouldn't you like to know?" he growls out. He's sitting over Kirishima's legs now, as Kirishima leans up to meet him halfway. It's not the most comfortable position, but like hell is Kirishima gonna say anything that'll move Bakugo away from him at this point. "Dude, you already played your hand," Kirishima says, one of his hands settling at the base of Bakugo's neck. The short hairs there are soft as he brushes his finger over them. He kisses Bakugo's cheek, then the line of his jaw. "It's okay though, if this is all new to you." He mimics Kirishima's movements, kissing his cheek and then his jaw. But as Kirishima speaks, Bakugo pulls back. "No one is worth this," Bakugo informs him. "There's literally no one out there I want to do this shit with." "You're doing it with me, right now," Kirishima says, even though he knows that getting Bakugo to realize that he doesn't want to be doing this is not in his best interest. Whatever. Bakugo, emboldened by something, bites down on Kirishima's tongue the next time their lips meet. The pain jolts through him, not entirely unwelcome. "It's okay," Kirishima assures him. "I don't mind helping you practice." "You talk a lot," Bakugou says, irritably. "Character flaw," Kirishima returns. "I've got a lot of them. Besides, I bet there was no real way for you to get close to anyone, right? When you were pretending to date Uraraka?" Bakugou sits back fully, the entirety of his weight on Kirishima's legs. "Don't fucking start with that," he warns. "I never even agreed to that. The reporters just made shit up, took photos of us when we were standing next to each other, and acted like that made us fucking lovers. What a joke." Kirishima blinks. "But you agreed to this. With me." Bakugou looks down at Kirishima with an inscrutable expression. His cheeks are flushed from the kissing, and his hair is slightly mussed. Easier than giving soy sauce one more fucking thing to nag me about. But even as he says it, his logic seems weak to Kirishima. The media had played out Bakugou and Uraraka's relationship for years. Bakugou may not have endorsed it, but that was still an incredibly long time to not dispel the rumors. And then he immediately delved right into this fake relationship with Kirishima, going at it with more gusto than he'd ever shown the charade with Uraraka. He kissed Kirishima 2 nights ago, without any prompting whatsoever. Kirishima doesn't get it. "Hey, can I ask you something?" "What?" Bakugou says, so flatly it's hardly a question. "What are you getting out of this? I know Sero said your reputation was on the line, and that they had to, soften the blow for you being gay and all, but that seems like stuff Sero would worry about more than you. Why'd you agree? At all?" Bakugou doesn't answer, for a long moment. His eyes narrow to slits as he stares Kirishima down, like he's thinking hard about what he's gonna say. Then he lets out an irritated noise. "It's whatever," he says vaguely, turning away so that he's not looking Kirishima in the eye. "But lying about who I'm dating isn't as shitty as lying about who I am." "Okay," Kirishima says, dumbly. That he can understand. He's always felt supported in who he is, more worried about what he thinks of himself than what other people think of him. But Bakugou, who's been in the public his entire life, maybe he's never had the luxury of answering just to himself. How can he be sure of who he is, when everything he does is so scrutinized and twisted by an audience? Kirishima settles his hands at Bakugou's waist, for a moment just content to have that point of contact. "I don't know why this all landed on me," he says truthfully, "but I'm glad that I can help." When he looks up, he finds Bakugou staring at him openly. His eyes are no longer narrowed and angry, but rather wide and incredulous. He's looking at Kirishima like he's a puzzle, or a riddle, something completely indecipherable. "Fuck," Bakugou mutters. "You really mean that, don't you, idiot?" "You really need to work on your pet names, boyfriend," Kirishima says. Bakugou snarls. "Hell's gonna freeze over before I give you a pet name." Okay, Kirishima says with a laugh. He can't really imagine calling Bakugou by a pet name either, even if they were really dating. That just seems too soft for him, somehow. Bakugou presses one hand on Kirishima's chest, keeping him pinned with the physical pressure, even as he corners Kirishima with his gaze. "Pay attention," he orders. Before Kirishima can ask what he means, Bakugou leans down until he's laying almost directly on top of Kirishima. He kisses him soundly on the lips, adopting a steady rhythm that pauses only when Kirishima's lips part and Bakugou thrusts his tongue into Kirishima's mouth. The kiss goes wet and messy after that, and Kirishima's blood pounds in his veins. When Bakugou finally pulls back, he leaves Kirishima gasping for breath. "So?" he demands. "Huh? What?" "The fucking kiss," Bakugou snaps. "That was better than any of the ones you gave me, wasn't it?" Is Bakugou asking Kirishima to grade him? Kirishima can't quite believe that. Except Bakugou is looking at him insistently, like he's expecting an assessment. Kirishima gurgles out a laugh. Yeah, definitely the best one, ever. Bakugou clicks his tongue against his teeth. Fucking useless, he mutters. The atmosphere between them is comfortable, lazy, even punctuated by Bakugou's irritation and Kirishima's nervous energy. For a moment, Kirishima is completely disconnected from the world, alone in this moment, with just Bakugou. The moment breaks. Kirishima! Kaminari calls out, bursting through the door. We ordered pizza. What the hell? Has no one in this apartment heard of knocking? Kirishima asks. Kaminari stands in the doorway, looking like he's just been struck by lightning. He blinks at Kirishima and Bakugou, then says, Bakugou, in your bed, on top of you? Bakugou takes no heed of Kirishima's limbs as he adjusts himself, getting to his feet and not even bothering to straighten his clothes. Kirishima has no idea how he looks so, well, not calm exactly, but unaffected. He's flushed and rumpled, his lips kissed red, but he stands with all the assurance of a god amongst mortals. Thank fuck, he says, sounding bored. I'm starving. He strides out the door, shoving Kaminari ahead of him. Right, Kaminari says. I guess you can have some pizza too, Bakugou. But then he cranes his neck back at Kirishima and mouths, What was that? Kirishima shrugs apologetically. He's not exactly sure himself. It takes Kirishima a moment to get his bearings after Bakugou and Kaminari have left the room. Just as he's gotten to his feet, preparing to follow them, his phone lights up from where it'd fallen amongst the blankets and pillows. Incoming call. Unknown number. Kirishima slides open the display. Hello? Hello, Kirishima-kun. This is Uraraka. Kirishima is sure that this is a dream, that he's about to wake up and be 15 years old again. He'd yawn and open his eyes and realize he'd fallen asleep watching UA, again, and at any moment Archia would come to wake him up because they're about to leave for Hokkaido or something. Kirishima-kun, are you there? Kirishima shakes his head. This isn't a dream. Yes, hi, Uraraka. How do you have my number? Sero-kun, Uraraka explains. I'm glad I caught you. I've been trying Bakugou-kun all day, but he won't answer any of my calls. He's being such a baby. Kirishima's not exactly sure what this means, but he doesn't have long to dwell on it. It's like a bucket of water had been thrown over his head. Last time he and Uraraka had talked, it had been in Higakure's party. It had been when Bakugou and Uraraka had still been together, at least in a press sense. Kirishima says, suddenly very nervous. Is there something I can help with? I hope so, Uraraka says. She doesn't sound upset, or like Kirishima had ruined her image in the press or stole a fake boyfriend. In fact, Kirishima can't remember hearing anything about Uraraka in the media for the past couple of weeks. Actually, this is more of an invitation. A bunch of us are going to spend a few days at the beach at one of Momo-chan's estates. Okay, Kirishima says, very lost. I wanted to know if you wanted to come with us, Uraraka explains. I know your band performs pretty frequently, right? But it'll only be for 2 days. Or maybe you could just come one day if that's too much. And of course the rest of your band should come too. It'll be me and Deku-kun and Todoroki-kun and a few other friends too. You want me to come? Kirishima asks, baffled. Why? Uraraka laughs. Because we like you, Kirishima-kun. This trip is a tradition. We go every year, when all of us can get together. But Bakugou-kun never agrees to come, and I was thinking if his boyfriend was there, he might at least think about it. Kirishima remembers Ground Zero's premiere. Yao Yosuru had invited Bakugou along then too, but he hadn't agreed to go. But they all keep trying, for some reason. You want him to come? Kirishima asks. He doesn't mean it unkindly. Hell, He knows better than anyone the strange pull of Bakugou's overtly off-putting personality. But he's not sure that others see things the same way. Uraraka lets out a little puff of a sigh. Of course. I mean, we've all had our issues over the year. But Bakugou worked with all of us for 5 years. Friends, whether he wants to admit it or not. And anyway, it's really time that he and Deku-kun talked things out. It wasn't Deku-kun's fault, no matter what Bakugou-kun thinks. You've definitely lost me, Kirishima admits. I have no idea what's going on between Midoriya and Bakugou. Uraraka hums knowingly. He's like that with even you, When I heard he was actually dating someone, I thought it meant he was opening up. I thought it was a good sign, at least. Actually dating. It hits Kirishima like a punch to the chest. Uraraka doesn't know. She thinks that Bakugou and Kirishima are actually dating. That these newest developments in Bakugou's life are signs of some grand shift in personality. But they aren't. It's all a lie, and one Kirishima is helping to keep. Listen, I've probably said too much, Uraraka says, apologetically. Bakugou-kun will tell you in his own time, I'm sure. But you should come with us, and you should try and get him to come too. I promise it'll be fun. At least for you. I never know with Bakugou-kun. Kirishima smiles as he talks to her. Uraraka's aura of levity and kindness is infectious. Sure, he says, trying to push aside his guilt. I'll see what I can do. Oi, a gruff voice calls out. Are you going to come and eat, or who are you talking to? Bakugou is standing in the doorway, balancing a plate laden with pizza in one hand. He glares suspiciously at the phone held against Kirishima's ear. Is that Bakugou-kun? Uraraka asks over the line. Tell him to stop being a jerk and screening my calls. Bakugou must hear a voice in the enclosed space of Kirishima's bedroom, because all at once he drops a plate of pizza to the floor and lunges across the small space. Kirishima doesn't have time to react. He yelps as Bakugou rushes to him, only thinking to hold his phone out of reach at the last moment. But Bakugou isn't deterred. He tackles Kirishima around the waist, sending them both toppling backwards onto the bed. The fall knocks the wind out of Kirishima, and in the resulting confusion, Bakugou grabs the phone out of his hand. What the hell do you think you're doing, Uraraka? Bakugou yells into the speaker. Don't fucking talk to Kirishima, and stop calling me. He jabs his thumb against the end call button, tossing the phone aside with an angry exhalation of breath. Meddling assholes, he mutters, rolling away from Kirishima to lie on his back. Do you treat all of your friends like that? Kirishima asks tentatively a moment later. They're lying side by side, both looking up at the ceiling. She's not my goddamn friend. Bakugou crosses his arms over his chest, which makes him look a little ridiculous as his legs hang off the edge of the bed. That's not what she thinks, Kirishima says, reaching up to rest his hands behind his head. She wants us to go on vacation with her. Like I could stand going on a trip with her. What about me? Kirishima bites down on the inside of his cheek, mulling this all over. I mean, I think it'd be fun. It'd be weird if I went and you didn't go, you know? Why? Bakugou asks blandly. It's not like she's going to complain if you go and I don't. Kirishima doesn't think Uraraka would complain exactly, but she clearly wants Bakugou there. Kirishima imagines the 4 UA alums like a member of a band. They've spent so much time together, worked on such meaningful projects for so long. But maybe, like in a band, there'd been creative differences. Would it be weird for you, showing up with a boyfriend? Uraraka doesn't seem fazed by it, but did anyone else know? Bakugou keeps his gaze fixed on the ceiling, letting out a harsh breath. Are you asking if fucking Deku and Todoroki know if I'm not straight? Yeah? Kirishima laughs, trying to cover up his nerves. Talking to Bakugou is like walking through a minefield. I mean, they wouldn't care, right? Midori and Todoroki played a gay couple for the entire last season. They wouldn't have done that if they'd... Shut up, Bakugou growls. Fuck, why do you keep poking at it? I don't fucking care anymore. Dude, you obviously do. You freaked out the last time I saw you with Midoriya. Bakugou barks out a harsh, cold laugh. Right, because he's so goddamn innocent and I'm the one overreacting. Of course. Kirishima frowns. I can't take your side if you don't tell me what your side is. Deku knew, Bakugou spits out. Of course he did. He's a goddamn stalker. Always watching people, figuring everything out about them. So, he figured out you weren't straight? It was my idea, Bakugou says, licking over his lips. The only thing anyone remembers that stupid show for. I came up with it. I pushed for it. The fucking showrunner was a coward. It took 2 years to convince him that it wouldn't tank his show. Take that risk. It was supposed to be my fucking storyline. Kirishima blinks. He had never even considered the possibility that Nobuhiko would be the character to come out on UA. His storyline with Ayane seemed inevitable to Kirishima, looking back on it. But he's had 3 years to rewatch the show in its entirety, to allow the various seasons and storylines to fuse together into a coherent whole. At the moment each episode was being filmed, surely there was more room for possibility. That's amazing, Kirishima breathes out. I mean, whether it was Nobuhiko or Daiki in the end. Dude, you have no idea. Seeing it happen on TV, with the whole world watching, the fact that UA went there at all meant everything to me. He'd been 18, a year and a half into his career as a performing musician, the lead guitarist of up-and-coming star Alien Queen's band. At a time in his life when Kirishima hadn't known what he wanted, or exactly who he was, UA was his anchor. It helped him feel okay about a lot of things. I don't fucking care, Bakugou says. But his words sound more like a reflex than anything with actual intent. It should have been me. 18-year-old Kirishima probably would not have been able to handle Bakugou playing a coming-out scene. He probably would have exploded. So, you're mad at Midoriya because he got the storyline you wanted? As petty as it sounds saying it out loud, Kirishima gets it. Bakugou had been a teenager himself, a young actor with nothing but promise. It must have been a risk, fighting for that storyline. And to have not given it to him, Kirishima thinks he can understand that anger. But that wasn't Midoriya's fault, was it? He only looks innocent, Bakugou growls. The two of you would probably get along. Fuck, you'd probably just keep smiling like idiots, no matter what's going on in your heads. I can't imagine him being some kind of, I don't know, role-stealing mastermind, Kirishima says. Because you're an idiot, Bakugou tells him. Maybe, Kirishima says agreeably, but I have a pretty good imagination. Bakugou huffs, not offering any immediate response. It's sort of nice, just laying there beside him. Kirishima has never dated anyone all that seriously before. The time he spent with Bakugou has now thoroughly outlasted any of the strings of dates he's been on with anyone else. And now, it seems like Bakugou has honestly opened up to him, like he would if he and Kirishima were really dating. Thanks for telling me, Kirishima says, sincerely. Like it matters, you're not going to be on my side. He says the last of that snidely, mocking Kirishima's earlier words. But I am, Kirishima says. I mean, I don't want to kill Midoriya or whatever it is you're after, but I get you, man. If us doing, this is going to help us get the roles you want, I'm so for it. Yeah? Bakugou drawls. And what the fuck's in it for you? Kirishima can think of a lot of things. Because he's selfish, and even if this will all mean nothing in the end, he's enjoying the time with Bakugou. He likes being with him. But the first thing that makes it out of his mouth is no grand declaration. Well, I get to take credit for you not being terrible at kissing now. Red rises from Bakugou's neck up to his temples, like the temperature rising in a thermometer. Then he shoves Kirishima off the bed.